Mystery solved. When the head of the Tea Party caucus, former presidential candidate Michelle Bachmann, announced her resignation from Congress last week when she announced she would not run for re-election. One of the many interesting things about that resignation was that she did it by video. And then she was unavailable for comment. And her staff would not say where she was. So she's effectively phoning in her resignation statement, and then she's nowhere to be found? It's kind of a strange way to do it. But we now know where she was. She was with this guy. This is the 1990s action movie hero, Steven Seagal, seen here dancing in Russia. If you do not recognize him from the dancing, that is because he no longer looks very much like the way he looked when he was a famous action movie hero fighting with Gary Busey in this pot boiler. Get it? But it's the same guy. This is him. This is him in Chechnya recently. I think we've got him, yeah. He's Chechnya on the right side of your screen. That's Steven Seagal. On the left side of your screen is what traditional, formal Chechen dancing looks like, which Mr. Seagal is emulating. He's given it a whirl himself. You never know how American celebrity of various kinds translates abroad. So every once in a while, you do get something like, Dennis Rodman being welcomed to North Korea as a national hero. In Russia, it turns out Vladimir Putin loves him some Steven Seagal, even late model Steven Seagal. And that Vladimir Putin affection has extended to Mr. Seagal getting a welcome like a head of state from the Putin-supported regime in Chechnya. And that is where Michelle Bachmann comes in. Michelle Bachmann and Congressman Steve King and Congressman Dana Rohrabacher and Steve Cohen and Bill Keating and Paul Cook all went to Russia last week to investigate the Boston bombing suspects from Chechnya. And they went with Steven Seagal. They had a press conference with him at the embassy and everything, where he wore those wacky glasses. The members of Congress said that Mr. Seagal set up a whole bunch of meetings for them with the FSB, which of course is what the KGB became. They'd also apparently wanted to go to Chechnya itself. Mr. Seagal wanted them to go meet his friend, the president of Chechnya, who's accused of widespread kidnappings, murder, and torture of his political opponents. Somewhere between those accusations and House of Representatives rules about accepting a free flight on Steven Seagal's private plane to go to Chechnya, that part of the trip fell through. Back home in Washington today, House Republicans decided that their contribution to America's foreign policy responsibilities would be to introduce legislation banning President Obama from closing the prison in Guantanamo. The Republicans' ban is folded into the language of the overall bill funding the whole Defense Department, which includes hundreds of millions of dollars to keep Guantanamo going and to shore it up for years to come. That huge funding bill for the whole Pentagon gets a vote this week, and the Republicans are apparently going to make the president veto all funding for the entire U.S. military if he wants to try to close Guantanamo. There is a lot going on in the world right now. Turkey is now swaying under 4 straight days of increasingly massive street protests against what previously seemed to be a stable government there. Mostly young people, but increasingly all kinds of people calling the government there authoritarian and anti-democratic and taking to the streets in protest. The ongoing war in Syria is the ongoing war in Syria, with increasingly complex international dynamics and politics surrounding that conflict, encompassing Russia and the EU and Israel and Lebanon and Jordan and Iraq and Turkey as well. There's a war on in Afghanistan, with 2 U.S. soldiers and a policeman and 9 kids killed in the eastern part of the country today in a suicide bomb attack outside a school. The war we left in our wake in Iraq is heated back up again, with the UN saying this weekend that the death toll just last month from bombings and assassinations and other attacks in Iraq was over 1,000 people killed. It is a big, complicated world out there right now, with a lot of particularly difficult foreign policy problems confronting our country. And 6 sitting members of Congress decided to go meet with the KGB on a trip arranged by Steven Seagal, the action movie guy from the 90s, and now with the Chechen dancing. 4 of those 6 members of Congress who went with him are on the Intelligence Committee or the Foreign Relations Committee in Congress, including Michelle Bachmann. What do other countries think of us when a congressional delegation like this shows up in their country?